Good morning. This is Barry Jones with Standards Plus History Academy, my YouTube channel. As usual, I'll put the link to my website in the comments section. And I wanted to, before we begin episode 18, go back and clean up something that I had discussed in an earlier episode, or actually add to it. And that was evidence. I wanted to add to the evidence that showed that Lee Harvey Oswald was intelligence. I have mentioned this before, but not in the same context. So I want to make sure to mention it again. And that is that upon his arrest, actually upon his death and subsequent investigation, it was discovered by numerous reporters who dug deep into the story that Lee Harvey Oswald was indeed an FBI informant. In fact, they found in FBI documents evidence that he was Agent 197, FBI Agent 197, and that he was paid $200 a month by the FBI to inform on the CIA. This was an arrangement that was put together by Bobby Kennedy when Oswald was trying to re-enter the United States after spending 3 years in Russia. And we talked about his hassle-free re-entrance and how unusual it was and how impossible it was actually for somebody who had turned over military secrets to the Soviets in the middle of the Cold War to come back to the United States without any legal jeopardy whatsoever. He was never charged with treason, never anything. There was no repercussions whatsoever. In fact, the State Department paid his way back with a Russian wife and child in tow. And of course, that's impossible. But it was possible in this context, in the sense that Bobby Kennedy and the White House were at war with the CIA, and the CIA and all its covert operations was running wild during this period of time. And here the United States and JFK is trying to make peace with the Soviets, trying to make peace with Fidel Castro and the Cubans after the Cuban Missile Crisis. And the CIA and its boys are continuing to make trouble, and it was threatening White House policy. So in absence of any information coming from the CIA, Bobby was looking for any way he could get information from the inside. And he saw an opportunity. When Lee Harvey Oswald wanted to re-enter, he just made a deal with him. And the deal was, you will give me inside info about the agency for whom you work, because he knew he was a fake defector. He knew he was a CIA asset. He says, you will give the FBI information about the CIA. And so that's what Oswald did for the next year and a half, whatever. And, we have proof of this in Chicago when the plot was to kill the president there. An FBI informant named Lee exposed the plot, and through his Dallas FBI contact, FBI agent James Hosty was able to telex the field office, the FBI field office in Chicago, and give advance notice of this plot to kill JFK in a motorcade. Of course, we know what happened. The White House canceled the trip, and he saved his life. There's also evidence that he provided warning about the Dallas plot. The day before the assassination, he appeared at Hosty's office again, gave him a letter, and though we don't know exactly what was in the letter, Hosty destroyed it the day of the assassination. But because of what he said to Lieutenant Jack Revel in the basement parking garage later that afternoon, suspicions are that that was another warning about the assassination plot that was to happen earlier that day. And the FBI was destroying that letter because they didn't want to be caught with evidence that they had foreknowledge or that they were participating in the setting up of Oswald. So in both occasions, Lee Harvey Oswald upheld his end of the bargain. He informed to the FBI through his official channels, through James Hosty. In the first place, in the first case, he saved JFK's life. In the second case, adjustments were made in case somebody did inform, and they just didn't pass it along the chain up the chain of command, and the warning went unheeded, and later it was destroyed. But This proves, again, this is just another layer of evidence that Oswald was, at the time of his death, simultaneously a CIA agent and also an FBI informant. Why else would Bobby make this deal unless it was with somebody who had actual information, actionable information from the CIA? And the only way you could have that kind of information is to be in the CIA, to be an agent. So I wanted to include that just as we begin episode 18 as a reminder. That's how he got back into the United States. He got back into the United States because he was a CIA agent and Bobby let him back in exchange for information. And of course, the CIA wanted him back too because he was their agent and they had designs for him in the future. So he's not what the government says he was, which was this lone nut, you know, kind of a ne'er-do-well stumble bum. That's not who he was at all. To be simultaneously an FBI informant, a CIA agent, you have to have some level of competence, demonstrably competent. And he was. His mission had succeeded in Russia. He'd learned the Russian language, and there was just a lot of evidence to show that Oswald was not only a competent agent, he was a good agent. Today's question I'm going to deal with, I've been asked this a million times because I use this title, and it's not a familiar title if you're not in intelligence, and that is, what is sheep dipping? Sheep dipping is an intelligence term. It comes from an actual practice in Britain where they would dip sheep into this solution before they shear them, and and this would take care of the wool on the sheep's body before they were sheared. Of course, once they were sheared, it was like an alternate identity to that sheep. You put them in this solution, you take them out, you shear them, and they don't even look the same. It's kind of like when my mom gives her dog a haircut, these big mangy haired dogs, and all of a sudden they have no hair, and all you see is skin and bones, and they don't even look like the same animal. Well, sheep dipping in intelligence circles means giving somebody an alternate identity, oftentimes without their even knowing it. You're giving them an alternate identity, and it always serves a purpose. For example, it always precedes a mission in some manner, shape, form, and there's a point to it to either set somebody up and in most cases that's what it is. You're setting somebody up to take the fall. That's why you'd be giving them an alternative identity, or you're setting somebody up to look like somebody who is not who they are, so that they will be accepted by whomever you're trying to infiltrate. For example, in 1957, Oswald was beginning to be sheep dipped as a communist when he was at El Toro Air Base. Remember, he acted overtly communist, and his unit mates called him Oswaldskevich, to use Russian words. He read communist literature that was delivered to his PO address. He used the red chess pieces when he played his friends in chess. He talked about Marxism all the time in favorable terms. This is the beginning of his sheep dipping as a communist. And this is going to be necessary so that when he goes to Russia, of course, that sheep dipping will continue as we go along. He learns the Russian language, and this is all in preparation for his mission to Russia, which, he's got to convince the Russians that he is a Marxist, and he wants to defect because he would prefer to live in a Marxist country than a capitalist country. All right. When he comes back, that mission is complete. And so on to the next mission, the summer of 63, which is where we're kind of moving now next. You're going to see him spend the entire summer acting as a pro-Castro communist. He's going to start a committee in New Orleans called the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. He's going to leaflet, pass out leaflets on busy street corners and streets in New Orleans about being a pro-Castro guy. And this is all in preparation for his next mission, which is to get a passport to Cuba and later to Russia to go back, you got to sell the fact that you're a Marxist. He even went on TV and said he was a Marxist Leninist, and a lot of public things happened in the summer of '63 trying to convince everybody that he was a pro-Castro communist. Okay. And of course, it doesn't hurt that he's already got on his resume that he went to Russia and he's married a Russian woman. So it's painting a picture. And of course, this is going to be used for two purposes. One purpose is so that he can get that passport, or at least apply for that passport and be granted that passport. Not that he's ever going to make it there, but he wants to be accepted so that it can be made to look like he was trying to flee the scene and go back to Cuba and Russia after the assassination. It's also to paint a picture that the guy who assassinated the president was a communist, and that speaks to motive. So sheep dipping, he is being ordered to do these things. That's the point. These are not independent actions on his own. He does not wake up in the morning and say, well, today I'm going to try to act like a communist. I'm going to pass out these leaflets. Tomorrow I'm gonna, apply for a passport to go to Cuba. No, none of this is his own idea. There are big thinkers above him that are plotting these missions and these conspiracies, and they push him around the chessboard like a pawn, the pawn that he is. And then it'll all come together at the end, and when they need it, they'll have this cover story to dump on the American people. So the two things to remember about sheep dipping: number one, it's an alternative identity, giving somebody an alternate identity, and number two, it always precedes a mission. So if someone's being sheep dipped, as is clear with Oswald in the summer of '63, he's being prepped for a mission. That's why he was brought home from the Soviet Union. They weren't finished with him yet. So let's begin talking. This is going to be a several episode discussion, but let's begin talking about his reactivation. He's been brought back to the United States. He's down in New Orleans again, which is his hometown. It's his stomping grounds, and he is being reactivated. This is a very busy time in Oswald's life. This summer, I don't know how he kept it all straight, to be quite honest with you. By day, he was sheep dipped as a pro-Castro communist. And we'll talk about what that means specifically. But he was doing things publicly, some of which I've already mentioned, almost every day. Something in public that later people will say, oh, yeah, I remember Lee Harvey Oswald. He's that guy that was on the street corner handing out leaflets. Oh, yeah, he's that guy that got arrested for fighting. He was handing out leaflets pro-Castro, and the anti-Castro people came and they had a big fight and he got arrested. Oh yeah, that Lee Harvey Oswald's that guy that was on the radio. He said he was a Marxist Leninist. There's going to be all kinds of stories. Oh yeah, he was the guy who ran that Fair Play for Cuba committee. So that's what he's doing by day. By night, he's working with several select individuals, one of whom we'll talk about briefly today. Working in a lab setting. There's actually 3 labs in New Orleans to create a bioweapon. You say, what a bioweapon? Where is this? Never heard of this before. Well, this is part of the reason why the government does not want people to know everything Oswald was doing in the summer of '63 in New Orleans, because this to this day has not been adequately investigated. This bioweapon project he was involved with in the evenings. We will talk about it. And all the while he's doing this day shift, night shift thing, he's also working a cover job. Now I say working, it's in name only. It's basically a no-show job, but it's providing him cover so that if anyone wants to know what he's doing in New Orleans, he's working at Riley Coffee, which is pictured here. The employment contract, you see Mrs. Barry Bertucci, personal secretary, William B. Riley Coffee Company, 640 Magazine Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, advised on August 5th, 1963, that Lee Harvey Oswald was employed as a maintenance man on May 15th, 1963. and it gives his address, et cetera, et cetera. Riley Coffey was a run by an alt-right guy. I mean, he was a anti-Castro, flaming anti-Castro guy. His direct boss or supervisor was an ex-FBI guy, who was also anti-Castro. You say, well, what's with all this anti-Castro? In the 60s, especially down in New Orleans and Miami, Florida, where the Cuban population was so big, that was a big deal, whether you were pro-Castro or anti-Castro. And the whole area of the country down there was overrun with anti-Castro Cubans. And so it's hard to do business if you were pro-Castro. And everybody down there wanted Castro overthrown. And so that was a pretty common phenomena. And so here he is pretending during the daytime while he's working a cover job. And I'll show you how he did that. While he's supposedly working this cover job, he's running around the city in very public ways, pretending to be a communist, pretending to be a pro-Castro guy. That's going to get him some notoriety, which means he's not going to be working at this job very long, clearly. And then at night, he's doing the bioweapons. So he's busy. He would arrive every morning with a young woman named Judith Very. Judith Very worked in payroll. They'd ride the bus together. They lived in the same part of town. They'd ride the bus together. And it turns out the relationship between Lee Harvey Oswald and Judith Very goes way beyond Riley Coffey. Okay. Turns out Judith Very was helping him in the evenings with this bioweapon project. And then on the side, the two of them were spending so much time together, riding the bus, going to cover jobs together, working in a bioweapon project together, that they both fell in love with each other. Now this is a unique story, the story of Judith Very, and we'll talk more about it as we go. But suffice it to say, there's a lot of people don't like today, especially that don't like Judith Very and her story because it doesn't fit conveniently within the narrative, obviously. And she's the only one that can really respond because she's still alive. She lives in Europe on 30-day visas in different countries, moving from place to place. She feels like her life is at risk at all times. And she does do YouTube Q&As and videos and things of that nature. She's kind of an odd character in this whole thing, but she's at this. It's important for you to know from the outset that at the time, she was a young girl. She was in her teens. And she was brilliant. She was what we call it's sort of like a savant of some sort. She was one of these, in the state of Florida where she was born and raised, basically, lived when she was growing up, said she had the highest IQ of anybody in the state in her age category. She was brilliant. She was brilliant. So she's brought into this bioweapon project because of that brilliance and because of the fact she's so young and she is naive. And Oswald is assigned to be her, basically her handler. So here are signatures or initials of Judith Very on Lee Harvey Oswald's time cards, which she included in her book, Me and Lee. So you can see at the top, the box is the name Lee Harvey Oswald. At the bottom of the red arrow is the initial Judith Very. That was her job. On the far left, underneath the LHO's cover job time cards, you'll see I blew it up a little bit where you can see Judy actually wrote out her name, Judy, in a heart because the two of them fell in love. And so her job was to cover for him, even though he was not actually working. They would arrive at Riley Coffey together. They would leave Riley Coffey together. But during the interim period, while Judy was at work, you're going to find out that Oswald was not. He was slipping out the back door to go do his day job, his real job for the CIA. And then he would reappear before his shift ended. They would leave together, and she would always sign his time cards. And that's how he got paid. And that's also cover information so that if anybody ever got to snooping around or asking, it was had evidence what he was doing. Who is this Judith Ferry? This is a picture of her on the left. The word I was looking for was prodigy. She was a child prodigy. As I mentioned, she had the highest IQ in her age category in Florida. She was very close with her grandmother growing up, and her grandmother died of cancer. And at age 14, it devastated Judith Ferry. And she decided at a very young age, you can tell she's a little bit different, who in their early teens takes on something like this. But she decides she's going to set up a makeshift lab at her high school, literally under the bleachers at the football stadium, a makeshift lab, and she's going to cure cancer for her grandma. She starts introducing cancer into mice in 7 days, which wasn't being done at any of the high dollar research facilities around the country. She's winning science fairs all over the state of Florida all of a sudden. She's gaining some notoriety. She's just a young teenager. At age 17, eventually some dignitaries come visiting her to find out how is she introducing cancer into mice in 7 days. And they go to her lab, and they finally tell the authorities, we got to shut this lab down. This is dangerous stuff she's doing here. And yeah, it's legitimate, but you can't have this lab under the football bleachers of a local high school. At age 17, Dr. Alton Osner, who is the preeminent cancer doctor in America at the time, he's trying to figure out a link between smoking and lung cancer. And he decides to send Judith Ferry to Roswell Park Institute in Buffalo, New York. Now, this was, at the time, the most important cancer research center in the United States. Think about this. You get sent to this place after you've gone to college and med school and done your residency, and you've got some kind of research credentials under your belt. And, you're probably in your late 20s, 30s, whatever. And here is this 17-year-old girl with nothing. She's just graduated high school. That's it. And of course, there's newspaper articles down in Bradenton, Florida, telling the story about how she's been recruited. It's wow, what an honor. She's go represent the city of Bradenton at the Buffalo, New York, Roswell Park Institute. She's on her way. She's going to be famous. She's going to cure cancer someday, yada, yada, yada. 2 years later, Osner recruits her back down to New Orleans. And he tells her, you're going to come down, you're going to help me cure cancer. I am on the cutting edge of this, proving this link between smoking and lung cancer. And I want you to help get me over the finish line. And if you'll do this, you'll serve a summer internship with me. When it's over, I will put you through Tulane Medical School. We will waive all of your undergrad requirements, and you will go directly into medical school. And all your tuition, all your expenses will be paid, and you get the degree that you need to go do the work that you want to do. Now, who wouldn't do this? I mean, Dr. Osner has already given her a huge leg up by vouching for her and getting her this job at Roswell Park, which she's done for the last 2 years. Why would she doubt his motives? Now he has the power to do what he's promising to do. He's the big man on campus down in New Orleans. Tulane is located in New Orleans. All she has to do is work a summer for him. And if they do what he says they're on the cusp of doing, proving a link between smoking and cancer, lung cancer, she's going to be famous. He's going to be famous, and they will be well on their way to solving the riddle that is cancer. And she's going to get all these degrees out of it, all paid. And so it's a no-brainer. So she goes down to New Orleans with visions of grandeur dancing in her head. All she's got to do is put in this work in the summer. They're going to cure cancer, and then she's going to go to med school, tuition paid. Wow, she's at the jackpot. She had no idea of the bait and switch that was happening to her. She had no idea that she thinks she's being recruited to cure cancer. She has no idea she's being recruited to actually work on a bioweapon to take cancer, the virus cancer, and weaponize it, turn it into a bioweapon. She has no idea what's happening. And the reason she's been chosen is because she has no credentials. She can't be traced. She hasn't graduated with any degrees. She hasn't published anything. She's been part of no research officially. She literally doesn't exist. And yet she has the knowledge of someone who's gone through and has all those things, all those qualifications and credentials. So as far as Dr. Osner, who turns out is doing this on behalf of the CIA, he has found the perfect person to help him on this covert project to create a bioweapon. Somebody who, when it's over, won't be missed if they have to get rid of her. She's and poor girl, she's walking into this, has no idea. So we'll get more into that bioweapon project and poor Judith Very. But I mentioned that it was a cover job, Riley Coffee. And so here is the back alleyway through which Oswald would escape his cover job every day. He'd walk right out this back door, which looks more like a sliding kind of a warehouse looking door. He was a maintenance man, so he had run of the entire place, right? That's what maintenance men do. And he would come into work, he would clock in with Judith Very, and then he'd walk right out that back door and go out to do his real job that day. Riley Coffee was chosen for a couple of reasons for his cover job. Remember now, he doesn't secure any of these jobs on his own, okay? That he didn't go to Riley Coffee and put in a job application. Riley Coffee came to him. Somebody high up had connections at Riley Coffee. The FBI guy who was a supervisor, the guy who owned William T. Riley, who owned Riley Coffee, was well known, traveled in the anti-Castro circles, and the CIA was involved in Operation Mongoose at the time, which was anti-Castro. So all they had to do was put the word out. They'd probably placed agents before in Riley Coffee. It was just something that they did, help each other out. You need an agent, needs a cover job. I'll give him a cover job for a couple months. And so that's how it worked. This is important to remember, by the way, when you consider how he ends up at the Texas School Book Depository. Okay, he did not go and apply for that job in the normal sense that you and I go and look for work. He was referred to that job. He was placed in that job. Somebody higher up wanted him at that job. So remember that when we get to Dallas. Just the same here, Riley Coffee was his cover job, and it was perfect cover because it was an anti-Castro organization. You know, it was run by anti-Castro William Riley. His boss was a former FBI agent who was anti-Castro. It was well known that Riley Coffee in the city of New Orleans was an anti-Castro outfit. So that's cover for one side. Another reason is its location. It's downtown. It's within walking distance of all the places that Oswald's going to need to be in to do his actual day job. So location was another reason Riley Coffee was chosen. Now, I started off today saying or asking the question, what is sheep dipping? And that's going to be the point of this whole venture, okay? The cover job is cover so he can say he has a job, and if anybody gets to snooping around, they see that, you know, he's an employee, he's gainfully employed, and that's why he's in New Orleans. But that is just cover. What he's going to be doing during the course of the day is going to contribute later to a cover story that's going to be used against him. Okay, it's going to be used for him on one hand, so that he can gain entrance into Cuba and Russia when he applies for a passport at the end of the summer. They're going to look at him, investigate him as they do anybody who applies for a passport. And they're going to say, well, it appears to be this guy is a Marxist. It appears this guy is a pro-Castro guy. He's on our side. So I think we should give him this passport. On the other hand, it's going to be used against him after the assassination to show, hey, look, this guy's a communist. He's pro-Castro. Somebody who's pro-Castro killed our president. And that was going to be used to hopefully justify an invasion into Cuba to overthrow Castro. So you see the double game that's being played here. Of course, Oswald is the agent. He's caught in the middle. He's just following orders. They said, go to New Orleans. He went to New Orleans. They said, go to Riley Coffee. there's a job waiting for you. He went to Riley Coffee. There was a job waiting for him. They said during the day, slip out the back and go to these places that we'll discuss in future episodes and do these things. And he did them. And he went there and he did it all summer long. And at the end of the summer, they had what they needed. They had what they needed. The conspirators had what they needed, and as far as their agent was concerned, he had succeeded in his next mission. I mean, you think about Oswald's track record. Every mission he's been assigned, he's been successful in. He did surveillance and reconnaissance of China. All indications are he succeeded. He gave disinformation to the Queen Bee hostesses. All indications are he was successful. He went to Russia, and just being able to stay in Russia was a success story. He not only did that, he gave the radar secrets so that the Russians could shoot down the U-2, which then sabotaged the Paris Peace Summit. Boom. Success upon success upon success upon success. Lee Harvey Oswald is their ace in the hole agent at this period in time. He is kicking butt and taking names. So now he's being reactivated in New Orleans, and this sheep dipping is taking place in the summer of '63 in preparation for his next mission, which of course we'll get to. So that is the short answer to what sheep dipping is. Of course, I'm going to go into it in depth in future episodes, what this sheep dipping involves. If you like what you are seeing and hearing in this series, feel free to give me a thumbs up. Hit the notification bell for future content. Also subscribe, it's free. And I would encourage you to check out my website, standardsplushistoryacademy.com. I teach history for a living to high school students in a public high school, but I also provide online education for homeschool students. All your history, high school history, I'm certified in all of it. So I teach US, I teach world, I teach government, and I also teach an elective offering in the JFK assassination. So the content is there if you want to just get the content, teach it yourself, or you can hire me to be your online teacher. Also, my books are linked on that website as well. I have some blogs and podcasts and things of that nature you can access as well. So check out my website, and feel free to comment on these YouTube videos. I encourage the comments. I'm trying to start as much dialogue as possible. I try to respond to every comment as I see them. Until the next time, everybody have a great day. Thank you.